Before borders were drawn and names were spoken, Finland was a land of water, ice and forests that tested the strength of all who dared to live there. Here people forged their lives in the face of harsh nature, transforming from nomadic hunters into a nation that withstood invaders and great wars. Finland's history is not just a series of events, but a story of survival, ingenuity and resilience, where challenges were transformed into strengths and adversity into opportunities, making it a unique nation between East and West. Welcome to this new video in our series on the history of European countries. To understand Finland's history, we must go back to a time before humans existed, before borders were drawn, and before names were spoken. A time when nature was the sole ruling force, shaping and reshaping the land at a pace immeasurable by human standards. During the last ice age, present-day Finland was buried under massive ice sheets, kilometers thick, compressing and flattening the land and creating geographical features that would shape the country's destiny for millennia. As the ice receded around 12,000 years ago, the land was not immediately ready to sustain life. Instead, it entered a period of profound transformation. The Earth's crust, previously weighed down by the ice, began to rise gradually, a phenomenon that continues to this day. Thousands of lakes formed, rivers branched out, and dense forests spread, creating a unique landscape, a land of water, wood, and cold. A harsh yet rich environment that would dictate a distinctive way of life for its inhabitants. The first humans arrived in this land after the ice melted, small groups of hunter-gatherers who followed herds and moved with the seasons. They lived in close harmony with nature, hunting reindeer, fishing, and utilizing forests and lakes for food and shelter. These groups were not primitive in the simplistic sense. They developed sophisticated stone tools, understood the cycles of nature, and built cumulative knowledge that paved the way for later settlements. Despite its northern location, Finland was not isolated from the wider world. From early times, its lands formed a natural corridor between east and west, connecting Scandinavia with Russia and the interior of Eurasia. Tools, methods, cultural symbols and even words travelled along these routes, making Finland a hub of cultural interaction rather than a peripheral backwater. Over the millennia, Finnish societies gradually transitioned from complete nomadism to relative stability. Distinctive stone and pottery cultures emerged, reflecting the diversity of environments and lifestyles. Then came the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, bringing fundamental transformations. Agricultural tools improved, weapons evolved, and more pronounced social distinctions between individuals and groups began to appear. The tribe was no longer merely a blood tie, but also an economic and military entity with its own interests and alliances. Major tribes emerged, such as the Tavastians in the interior, the Karelians in the east, and the ancestors of the Finns in the southwest. Each group had its own local identity, way of life, and trade networks, yet they shared a close language and common cultural roots. During this period, the outlines of primitive political organization began to appear, with local leaders guiding communities based on status, experience, and military strength. Meanwhile, the Sami people in the far north maintained a pastoral and hunting lifestyle, developing a distinct identity that endured despite major transformations. The south and central regions, however, became more focused on agriculture and trade, deepening regional difference and contributing to Finland's cultural diversity. With the onset of the Middle Ages, Finland was no longer simply a tribal space, but a strategic border region between two rising powers, Sweden to the west and Novgorod to the east. Swedish expansion brought Western Christianity, administrative language, and European law, linking Finland to the Latin world. In contrast, the East maintained ties to orthodoxy and Slavic traditions. The Treaty of Göteborg formalized this division, establishing not just a political line, but a cultural boundary that would profoundly shape Finnish identity. As Swedish rule became established, Finland integrated into a more structured state. Written laws, a functioning church, burgeoning coastal towns, and a rural society that nevertheless retained autonomy and local customs. This transition was not smooth. It was accompanied by social tensions and conflicts, but it laid the foundation for a cultural and linguistic identity that would endure for centuries. Finland's history was shaped not only by conquest or royal decrees, but also by the long interplay of land and climate, migration and settlement, trade and religion. It is a slowly unfolding, deeply rooted history, beginning with the Ice Age and culminating in a nation that carved out a unique position between East and West. One of the most profound transformations occurred in the 16th century, when the Lutheran Reformation reached Finland within the Kingdom of Sweden. This change was not merely religious, it touched the very core of Finnish culture, language and society. Before the Reformation, Finnish was primarily spoken in daily life, while Latin and Swedish dominated the church and administration. The Reformation necessitated communication in the vernacular, bringing Finnish from the margins of oral life into the centre of written culture. At the heart of this transformation stood Mikael Agricola, rightly considered the father of written Finnish. Educated in Wittenberg and influenced by Martin Luther, Agricola returned to Finland with the conviction that faith was incomplete without understanding. He translated the New Testament, wrote religious and educational texts, and established the first system of spelling and grammar for Finnish, based on local dialects, but striving for clarity and consistency. His works were not merely religious texts, but a true rebirth of Finnish literature and the foundation of a shared linguistic identity. The Reformation also transformed education. Lutheranism emphasized that reading the Bible was a duty for every believer, not just the clergy, making literacy a societal goal. Basic education spread through churches and parishes, and reading catechisms became essential for religious and social integration. Over time, this contributed to rising literacy rates and Finland's subsequent reputation as a highly educated society. Religious institutions were also reshaped. Monasteries were dissolved, their lands transferred to the Swedish crown, strengthening state power and linking the church to administration. Parishes became centres of local governance, recording population data, collecting taxes, and managing daily affairs. Although some pre-Christian traditions persisted in rural areas, they gradually integrated into a Lutheran framework, producing a Finnish religious culture blending European doctrine with local practices. During the 17th and early 18th centuries, Finland was at the heart of Sweden's imperial ambitions. Heavy taxes and conscription were imposed, and thousands of Finnish soldiers fought in distant wars, earning a formidable reputation, particularly the Hakapelitat, renowned for their speed and discipline. Yet rural communities suffered from labour shortages, poverty and recurring famines, making daily life harsh. The Great Northern War brought this suffering to its peak. Russian forces invaded Finland in the period known as the Great Fury, causing bloody occupation, village destruction, administrative collapse and widespread displacement. Yet Finnish society demonstrated remarkable resilience. Families rebuilt villages, the Church resumed its supportive role, and traditions of cooperation and survival endured. This phase ended with Sweden's decline as a European power, exposing Finland's vulnerability and strategic importance. These experiences paved the way for the 19th century transformation, when Finland transitioned from part of the Swedish kingdom to a distinct entity within the Russian Empire, beginning a new chapter in political history built on cultural and social resilience. At the dawn of the 19th century, Finland was at a crucial crossroads. A peaceful periphery of northern Europe turned into a contested frontier between two empires. Sweden, which had ruled Finland for nearly 6 centuries, was in decline, while Tsarist Russia sought to secure its western borders. The Napoleonic Wars further reshaped Europe, forcing smaller states into difficult choices. When Sweden refused to join Napoleon's continental blockade of Britain, Russia seized the opportunity. With indirect support from France, the Russian army invaded Finland in 1808. The Finnish War, 1808-1809, ended centuries of Swedish rule. The population suffered famine and devastation, concluding with the Treaty of Fredrikshamn, by which Sweden formally ceded Finland. Yet the loss of Sweden marked the beginning of a new era. Tsar Alexander I sought the Finns' loyalty, establishing the Grand Duchy of Finland with broad autonomy within Russia. Finland retained Swedish laws, its judicial system, Lutheran Church, and even its currency. The Porvoo Diet of 1809 formalized this arrangement, providing a legal basis for an independent political identity for the first time. The capital moved from Turku to Helsinki, symbolically and strategically closer to Russia. Helsinki grew as an administrative center, state institutions developed, bureaucracy expanded, and trade and education flourished. Finland entered the 19th century in relative stability, enabling internal development over military exhaustion. The century also witnessed a cultural renaissance. Finnish identity became a conscious cultural project. Elias Lönnrot compiled folk epics into the Kalevala, turning oral tradition into a national symbol. Johann Wilhelm Snellman championed Finnish as a language of state and culture. Gradually, Finnish entered schools, administration and literature, standing alongside Swedish. Late 19th century Russification policies threatened this balance, imposing Russian language in administration and curtailing parliamentary powers. Peaceful civil resistance emerged, fostering political awareness and broad popular participation. Reforms followed: an elected parliament in 1906 and women's suffrage, preceding most European countries. The Russian Revolution allowed Finland to declare independence in December 1917. Yet political and social tensions erupted into the 1918 Civil War between socialist Reds and conservative Whites, led by General Carl Gustav Mannerheim. The White victory left deep societal scars. Finland chose reconciliation and nation-building. A democratic republic was established, social reforms implemented, and educational and legal institutions strengthened to overcome the legacy of division. But challenges persisted. In the 1930s, political extremism and international crises loomed. These pressures culminated in the Winter War, 1939-1940, when the Soviet Union invaded. Despite Soviet superiority and territorial losses, Finland's resistance preserved its independence, cementing its reputation as a resilient nation capable of defending its sovereignty. In the Continuation War, 1941-1944, Finland acted from necessity, not ideology, seeking survival, recovery of lost territories, and secure borders. Cooperation with Germany occurred militarily, yet Finland maintained political distance, parliamentary governance, and democratic institutions. The war ended with heavy human losses, additional territorial concessions and reparations to the Soviet Union, but Finland avoided full occupation. Post-war, the country resettled displaced populations, paid reparations in goods, and rapidly industrialized, transitioning from agrarian to industrial economy. Politically, Finland pursued a pragmatic strategy known as Finlandization: peaceful relations with the Soviet Union, avoidance of provocation, military neutrality, democracy, and trade with the West. During the Cold War, Finland built a robust welfare state, universal education and healthcare, and maintained cohesion and trust. After the Soviet Union's collapse, Finland joined the European Union, adopted the euro, and embraced a knowledge-based economy. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, it became a technological and innovative leader, with Nokia symbolizing this transformation, followed by diversification into software, gaming, AI, clean energy, and design, alongside environmental sustainability and e-governance. Today, Finland is a stable democracy with strong institutions, high public trust, and a top-ranking education system. It is an active EU member and joined NATO, while preserving traditions of diplomacy. Finland plays an influential role in cybersecurity, peace-building and crisis management, exemplifying how a small country can convert historical challenges into lasting stability and prosperity. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.